are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
Hey everyone, I'm Amrit, as you heard. I actually joined Sidewalk Labs fairly recently. I joined in January, but I came from about 9 years at our sister company, Google, working in a combination of business development and operations, as you heard. So I'm really excited to be at Sidewalk Labs. A big part of that excitement is because of our mission, and I put it up here on the first slide because I wanted to yell it out boldly, but also because it's something that is very clearly aligned with what Shadow Summit is all about. So we're looking at radically improving urban life. I think that's the key phrase here. We're looking at ways to think about city building, about the experience in urban areas differently. And to give just a little bit of an intro, although I want to make sure we focus on the kind of the center of this speech, of this talk, is about generative design. And actually, Brian's going to give you a beautiful demo. We started about 5 years ago, and it started as a series of conversations between Larry Page, who's the CEO, former CEO, I should say, and founder of Google, and our CEO, Dan Doctorow, who's the deputy mayor of New York under Mike Bloomberg. And they were kind of proposing themselves a pretty big question. How do we think about building cities differently, and how do we think about that with technology at its core? So Sidewalk Labs emerged, and as we've kind of learned along the way, and as we've developed the innovations that we think are either inevitable and or desirable in cities, we've developed a series of products. One of which, by the way, just got announced yesterday. So if you're keen on learning about other things that we're doing, check out Mesa. We just made a pretty exciting announcement. But we're going to talk to you about something called generative design. There we go. And this is going to be, you're going to have an entertaining GIF behind me, which I love, but you'll get the real thing from Brian soon. But to explain generative design, this innovation, this product came out of a challenge that we ourselves faced. So we were looking at developing a master plan for a site in Toronto. And we looked at it the traditional way, which is that you would engage an architect and you would come up with, a handful of designs of options for what you would do with that space. And it was very apparent to us that this was a problem that machine learning and some of the strengths that our sister company and our kind of parent company, Google and Alphabet, have been known to adopt. So here we saw an opportunity to employ machines in places where humans would kind of use some help. We are not replacing humans, we are supplementing humans. And importantly, instead of having just 3 or 4 different design options, we can give you thousands, if not many more. The analogy I like to use is that, like Google search, where you type in your search query, whatever it might be, and we'll tell you, it took us 0.2 seconds to return the results, and there are 1 billion and something results. No one actually wants to see all those results. We do want to know that it happened. We want to know there's a comprehensive assessment of all the different variables and all the different considerations. But what we're going to do is come back to you with the top 10. And generative design works similarly. We can, as you can see from the GIF, look at all the different design options that are possible in a space. And it's important to look at the constraints as well as the surrounding neighborhood. And then we can assess them based on the criteria that the developer or design firm or the combination of the two care about. So taking this kind of traditionally complex and siloed and sub-optimized process, we want to use machine learning to make it better, but also to make it manageable. So to make sure that people are not just overwhelmed by the power of computation, but also using it to their advantage. And I actually only have one more slide. That's a live, 2 more slides. The last one being the most important. before I kick it off to Brian. But this is an example of what we did in Toronto. And again, actually, I was looking at the About page for Shadow Summit yesterday, and there was a call out to architects, planners, and AEC firms. You can both optimize your bottom line and make better cities. So we think a lot about these two buckets of what is the financial return that we can optimize for, and at the same time, we can look at quality of life metrics like open space, daylight access, and here you have what is called a precinct plan. So this is basically the baseline that we used, or that was given to us based on the existing master plan. And using GenDes, we were able to produce over 400 better performing scenarios on both those two categories, both on financial return and these quality of life metrics. So here we're just showing you open space, daylight access, and total GFA. Those are the ones that were kind of identified as prioritized criteria, but we can do a lot more. And then my final, most important slide is our website. If you're interested in talking with us, if you're interested in checking out more, there's actually a video. There's a video with some of the things that you've seen, but again, you're going to see the real thing from Brian. But come to our website. There's a form on there for if you think that you may have a project site that is fitting for GenDes, or if you want to learn more. And there's also our email address on there, and that goes straight to me. And so I would love to talk with anyone about generative design. And with that, I'm going to kick it off to Brian, who's going to show you the tool in action.
Thanks, Amrit. That's a great intro. And just give me a sec here to share my screen. Oh, boy. I apologize. I'm going to have to relaunch Chrome, I think, Amrit. So while I do that, let me just introduce myself. So I'm Brian. I am a designer at Sidewalk Labs with a background in architecture and technology. As sort of mentioned, that very long, distinguished intro, I have some of this sort of hybrid perspective on what design means for us. But what I want to emphasize, of course, is that, and actually I will have to leave this meeting in a sec, that the tool is actually able to really speak to the talents of the team behind it. So we have engineers who are experts in machine learning. We have those who have experts in finance and development, those who know digital product from Google, and all of that rolls into what the tool is today. Not to tease anyone, but I actually have to quit this meeting and rejoin in a sec.
Okay, I'll talk about Brian while he's gone and entertain you all. If there are questions, I would love to take them as well. But I think as you heard from Brian's intro, he is truly the expert, and has not only been at the forefront of this field for a number of years, but also importantly is engaging with folks who are kind of challenging, refining, and improving the work that we're doing. So what you're seeing is many years in the making.
Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, Amrit, is that working for you?
We can see your screen. We can't see you.
Okay, that's fine. I'm the less important portion of this, but okay, we're all set and we're in. And so I don't know if Amrit mentioned this, but I've been at Sidewalk for a little over 2 years now. And generative design at that time has gone from an R&D effort to something that is fully ready for the real world and development projects in it. I think that's really what is so exciting about it today. And speaking to this audience is that this is a digital tool designed to really bring a very advanced set of technologies to the problem space of urban development and design, where we know there's complexity that can be solved with technology, and it's really ready and proven out to be suitable for that use case. And in the spirit of that sort of readiness, and we're actually going to do this rest of this presentation through a live demo of the product, ignoring all advice about the perils of live demos, and use it as a frame to talk through why this generative design tool is actually better for everyone.
And Brian, just so you know, we can see your full screen. Not just
got it. Great. So you see yourself. How's that?
That's perfect. Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amrit. So what we're looking at here is actually the tool as configured for a real world project. This was actually done earlier this year. So this is actually sort of a beta version of what we will want to share with the rest of the world. But it speaks to the power of the tool to configure and onboard into a real project. And so the developer, which was the customer here, had an 85-acre master plan in an urban area, and they had sort of arrived at a design for the bulk of it. And the sort of only parcel left was this 12-acre parcel highlighted here in the tool in black. And sort of in one of those classic, problems of development, they were sort of constrained in terms of the spatial abilities. There was zoning, there was a permission process, there's what they'd already gotten approved versus what they wanted. And there was, of course, a financial constraint. There was a need to sort of increase the total development yield of this project to make it successful. And finally, there was a performance requirement. As good placemakers, the development partner here wanted to make sure that the quality of life of this development would meet the requirements they had internally, as well as those that have been set out by the public entity in this jurisdiction. And so, they'd done the normal process. They had asked an architect to come up with 1 or 2 iterations. Those didn't quite net out on the numbers. And that's really where they turned to the tool, the Generative Design tool and Sidewalk Labs, to help them produce a lot more options that not only got them to that higher yield, but also got them to that better performance and better value for the project overall. And so just by way of speaking to how that works, the tool is able to take in those constraints, so all the spatial data that you need to generate a design, including zoning, adjacent development, street grids, infrastructure, also non-spatial information like a financial data model or a sustainability and energy model. All of that is configured from the tool by default to what is needed for the project and its local context. And then the tool goes to work and starts to generate hundreds of designs. And what I'm showing you here is just a slice of that. This is 750 design options, but that really speaks to the power of the tool, right? In the matter of really hours, the tool is able to turn around designs from that initial configuration, and all of them are different. They all sort of optimize for different goals, different program scenarios, different yields or constraints. But it's really getting us to that holy grail of a design process where we can look across all these designs with different conditions and constraints, but really make a true apples to apples comparison across them and understand how a decision that we might make at this stage affects the overall project and which decisions actually lead to better outcomes. And so to that effect, I'm going to turn on a few views now. The tool is actually able to evaluate these designs. So in addition to generating things, we're actually able to evaluate them for things like daylight access, which we're seeing here. And so this color map is really showing areas of good daylighting performance, poor daylighting performance, areas that might actually need architectural treatments to increase the sort of the quality of life of those units. And we could, of course, optimize for daylight and find designs that really maximize the daylight potential of the buildings in the development. Of course, that's not the only consideration. And so another configuration in this project was actually to evaluate the impact of proposed buildings on the adjacent development. And I think this is, again, one of those ways in which a generative design tool is actually better for everyone. So it's not just the residents who will live in the units that are shown in white here. It's actually the folks who already live around the site in the neighborhood. And we can actually understand, will a proposed development overshadow them? Will it cause adverse impacts on their views or daylight? And all of this can be summarized in some kind of evaluation in the tool and optimized for so that we can solve across those problems. And so the last bit really to talk about here is the sort of magical portion. And this is where I sort of leave my field of expertise and defer to the engineering team. But the tool combines a lot of advanced approaches in machine learning to optimize the design. So we're not only producing several hundred, we're actually using this technology to find out which designs are better. And the tool can suggest to the user, these are the top 3 for daylight. These are the top 3 for yield. Or these are the top 3 that actually combine both daylight and yield together. And in this example project that we did with our customer, we actually found 24 designs that outperformed their original design from their architect, while also increasing the total usable area, the net profitability of the project, and beating sort of the performance requirements for daylight and open space. And so I think that's really, speaking to the power of the tool. We're able to add 250,000 square feet to a 3 million square foot project. And we're able to add the associated increase in profitability, but also make sure that we're still meeting the requirements for unit size, daylight access, performance in terms of access to transit, and things like views and other qualitative measures. And so maybe just to close out here before I hand over to Amrit to close us out, I think the thing I just emphasize is, generative design isn't just better for the developer. Sure, it's unlocking value and trying new options and allowing us to think more thoroughly and with better evidence across decisions. It's also better for the designer, right? It's giving the designer a chance to, expedite the grunt work of the technology and really focus in on the critical questions that really matter at an early stage. So things like, what is the right street grid for this site? Or how do I want to design my land use concept before I get into the massings? For the city, the tool is actually better because it's giving us an evidence basis on which to evaluate proposals. I think usually, and we all know this, the approval process is cumbersome, it's complicated, there's lots of uncertainties, and it's not really clear on what basis you're making certain kinds of arguments. A tool like this is really standardizing that process. We're getting to evaluations that are clear, well-defined, and most importantly, consistent. And so that you could compare 5 designs, 100 designs, 500 designs, all on the same basis and understand which actually is better for not just the project, but also the people who live around it and the city as a whole. And I think that really ties into that last bit about everyone. This tool is really designed to reflect our mission here, which is to radically improve that quality of life. And so we really believe that a digital product like this, where we're giving all members of the development process the opportunity to voice their priorities, structure them into a score, and then use technology to optimize across, is one that's ultimately going to lead to better places and greater places to live. And that's, I think, the real thing we're all after here, right? Is to deliver a better place through this technology. And so with that, Amrit, I'd love to hand it back to you. You might be muted, Amrit.
Oh, am I still muted? Weird. No, you can't hear me. It's weird. I'm not muted. Oh, you can hear me now?
Good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That don't happen. But I'm going to actually share my screen again just so that people can see the our website. We wanted to just make sure that we had time for questions, and we actually got 2 questions in the chat. So let me just quickly do that. I mean, it's a pretty easy website. So don't forget it. Oh, now I've lost the questions though. Okay, it's Q&A. So from first I had from Carson, but whatever. Now that I'm sharing my screen, I can't see it. But Carson, you had asked a question about village economy, and I'd love to learn more about that project. Are you able to? Are you on the? I think you're on the panel, so you can speak, right?
So he's an attendee, so he may not be able to speak, guys.
Oh, okay. Well, Carson, send more in the chat, or like I said, you can send me an email. I'd love to learn more. But maybe I'll go to Eric's question, and maybe the question will be addressed in that. Eric's question is, could the solution be used for optimizing an office building product that is being developed for deployment to about 50 different locations around the globe? Actually, here I'd also love to learn more about exactly what that office building product is, Eric. But yeah, generally, generative design is best when we have multiple buildings. So as you saw from Brian's demo, the kind of impact of one building massing on another is something that we are assessing for. Now we can do it on single office buildings. And at the right size and scale, it will make sense to do that degree of optimization. And we've actually had some conversations about that. But I'd love to learn more about what this product is that you're asking about. And I think generally, go to our website, or just you can actually email me at amrit@sidewalklabs.com. Buildings consist of modules that can be deployed in different configurations. Okay, that's interesting. My default answer is going to be yes. We can help you. We can work with you. But send us some more information, and Brian and I can kind of take a look and dive a little bit deeper. And then Carson's question, I actually was looking to find more information about the village economy side. I don't know which country it's in, but if you find that it is similar to what we had announced in Toronto, then it can definitely be used, because that was exactly the challenge that we ourselves faced. Now it's interesting. So a lot of the inbound interest that I get are from folks who are looking to Sidewalk Labs for deploying some of the innovations that we announced in Toronto. So for those, I can give more of the background here, but there's a document that we call the Master Innovation and Development Plan, the MIDIP, as we say for short, and it is not short. It is a 1,500-page document, which talks about all the different innovations that we envision for the cities of the future. This was a blueprint for, again, this project we talked about in Toronto, but was actually really, truly a a kind of guidebook for everyone, right? It's we think our mission requires us to scale and to not be just in one city, but to be all over the world. And the tool Generative Design is certainly consistent with that. But if you look at that document, there's a lot that we wanted to share and kind of open source to the world about our innovations. And especially if there are particular pieces of that you find interesting, whether it's related to sustainability, to mobility, et cetera, go ahead and reach out. Again, my email is amrit@sidewalklabs.com. And we'd love to, there are certain ones of those that we have productized that we could, that we're actually looking for active customers for, and other ones where we're, happy to point you towards the resources that we've ourselves used and developed.
All right, so we have another one in the chat that you may not be able to see.
Oh, cool. Tell me.
This is from Farah. Do you have data-driven well-being assessments for the public realm? And have you used this in the UAE? If not, she has her contact info and I can connect you guys later.
Okay, I would definitely love to be connected. I'll probably defer to Brian more in terms of the data source, but we've actually been talking with a couple folks in UAE. I mean, I think it's just one thing to notice. It's exciting to see the scale of projects in that region and the ambition, and I think that's certainly aligned with where we can be helpful. But we have not yet done an active engagement there yet, but we are in talks and we're open to it. And Brian, I'll kick off to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of well-being assessments, that's touched on in a few ways, actually. I think that reflects just the multidimensionality of that problem. But we can assess the access to daylight from public spaces. To what degree are they overshadowed by parks? We can measure the walkability of an overall district. So what percentage of commutes by pedestrians are going to pass by parks or other elements in the public realm you want to activate. So there are a number of ways, and I think we're always adding more features here to get at it. But I think the core premise is that we don't care just about the vertical development in this tool. It's also what's happening at the ground plane, at the first 40 feet of a project.
Awesome. And then we got one more from Karsten, who wants to know if the effects of climate change are modeled in your tool.
So we I think on a broader point, let me kind of emphasize that sustainability. So our two pillars at Sidewalk today are sustainability and affordability. Now, the other tool that I mentioned called Mesa is an energy optimization kit is like very keenly focused on the kind of climate positive mission that we have. GenDes is actually doing both, right? So as you see, a lot of the metrics that we're looking at, even things like daylight, depending on where you are, as Brian had mentioned, that affects how you're going to be using HVAC, et cetera, internally. And so we want to help you optimize so that you're building the right building first and foremost, and then you can use our tool Mesa when the building is live. But in terms of climate change, kind of in terms of more macro trends, I think that's something that we would work with the developer on getting the right data set on and the right assumptions, because it's, for each project site, it really is specific to that location. Brian, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
No, I think that's totally right. And then maybe just to speak a little bit to that point, we have in previous work, partnered on developing, in some cases like GHG estimations for designs. And so that really speaks to the ability of a tool to integrate with external models or spreadsheets as needed. But it is, I think as we're aware, very sensitive to the project itself. So it's hard to generalize those models. So it is something that sort of happens currently, at least, and on a per project engagement basis.
Great. And Anastasia, I know that we're heading off into a panel in a few minutes. So I think there'll be a chance for people to ask questions there as well. But in closing, I'd say just visit our website and email us. I basically respond to all emails. I should really
It's a little bit dangerous, like throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say in what time frame I do that, but sometimes it takes longer than others.
Got it. All right, so thank you guys for sharing so much information with us and taking some time, and then we'll see, you guys later on your panel. All right.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.